Okay, so continuing along here, he says, such a definition of truth is an object of uncertainty held fast through appropriation with the most passionate inwardness is the truth. The highest truth there is for an existing, italicized, person. And at this point where the road swings off, objective knowledge is suspended. Okay, so we were talking about objective and subjective truths, and we were saying subjective truths are the most meaningful to you. But interestingly enough, the most passionate sort of subjective truths are ones where the objectivity of the truth is suspended, or objective knowledge about the truth is suspended, or there's an antithesis, he says at the beginning, toward objectivity. And what he means by this is simply, take an example from your own life if you've ever been in love. In love, you want to always think of eros, or the feeling of being in love, or that infatuation that you feel as the great analog to what he means by faith. Okay? Eros is faith. And think about this. You can never really prove objectively that someone's in love with you or that you're in love with them. It involves trust. It involves faith to believe that. There is no way to prove it, right? No matter what, you can always see a situation as, well, I don't know, that person might not be in love with me. No matter what action they do, it's never completely sure. However, you can know it, you can feel it in passion, and you can feel it in faith. You can trust them, right? You can trust that someone else is in love with you, but you can also, how do you prove that you're in love with somebody else? Well, you just know it. You feel it. It's eros. It's a kind of madness, right? And reason is actually suspended. You can't almost rationally articulate it. So as we're going through here, through Kierkegaard's idea of faith and truth as subjectivity, which are the same thing, think of eros and the feeling of being in love that you feel, and that's what he's trying to get at. These important experiences of existence, experiences in existence that cannot be thought. Okay, so objective knowledge is suspended. Objectively, he then has only uncertainty. But this is precisely what intensifies the infinite passion of inwardness. And truth is precisely the daring venture of choosing the objective uncertainty with the passion of the infinite. And he goes down a little bit. In a mathematical proposition, for example, the objectivity is given, but therefore its truth is also an indifferent truth. Okay, and this is on again 207. And he continues on. But the definition of truth stated above is a paraphrasing of faith. There he says it. Without risk, there is no faith. Without risk, there is no faith. We could say without anxiety, there is no faith. That is, without the object being unsure, without you being uncertain about the object. That is, in the case he's talking about here, the existence of God has to be unsure. Okay? Faith is the contradiction between the infinite passion of inwardness and the objective uncertainty. If I'm able to apprehend God objectively, I do not have faith. But because I cannot do this, I must have faith. If I want to keep myself in faith, I must continually see to it that I hold fast to the objective uncertainty. See to it that in the infinite uncertainty, I am out on 770,000 fathoms of water and still have faith. What is he saying here again? The analysis or the analogy of eros. Eros for the Greeks, for example, means being in love, but it also means desire or need or want. Not just desire, but desire for an object that you do not yet have. When you're in love with something, it's a need for something. When they put human beings under the fMRI brain scans, for example, and they show them a picture of somebody that they're in love with, their hunger center in their brain lights up, or what it looks like, rather. I think biological anthropologist, I think that's what her title is, named Helen Fisher, talks about this in one of her TED Talks, if you're interested, that being in love looks more like a desire or more like a hunger. It's dopaminergic. You're running to some telos or goal that you don't yet have, right? And once it's there, once you know it's there, people sort of fall out of love. Once you know that something is completely certain, there's no passion. By analogy here, what Kierkegaard is saying is that God, or faith in God, is the ultimate passion we can have toward existence, because we can never be sure of the existence of God. God seems to have made that the case on purpose. He's also thinking about, if you've ever heard of the philosopher Baruch Spinoza, who talks about this, it's as if Kierkegaard takes Spinoza's philosophy, which is very much influenced by Stoicism, some think, certainly I think so, and inverts it. He inverts Spinoza's philosophy. What's Spinoza's philosophy? Well, Spinoza's whole philosophy is about getting the emotions to abate, basically about ridding yourself of these problematic passions, so you can experience a kind of liberation or freedom. This was the Stoics' ideal. And how did you do that for the Stoics? And the same thing with Spinoza, with reason. You started to realize that everything that happens according to the will of God, or happens deterministically. That is, for Spinoza and for the Stoics, let's stick with Spinoza. Spinoza, he's a radical determinist. Everything in the universe is absolutely determined. From me going like this to what happens tomorrow to what happened 30 years ago, it's all been determined like a domino effect, or you could say predetermined, like a domino. And that, everything is mechanistically and blind, causally fated or causally determined. Spinoza thinks if you can really grasp this, if you can really understand this through studying science and psychology and physics and stuff, you can experience a kind of liberation. You don't have to ever be upset about anything anymore. Think about this. If something happens and you knew that it had to have happened that way and there was nothing you can do about it, would you really feel anxious or passionate about it? It's kind of like when you have a public speaking engagement, for example. Normally when you know, like you're just meeting a friend or something like this, you're typically not anxious. Or think of the times in your life that you're not anxious. You're usually not anxious because you're pretty sure of how it's going to go. There's no uncertainty there. You've talked to this person a million times. You know they accept you. Everything's there. Everything's fine. No anxiety. However, you have to give a speech before people you don't know. Ooh, I could fail. What if it turns out this way? What if it turns out that way? It's all this possibility, right? More possibility there is, the more anxiety. Now, what Spinoza would say is, no. If you were really smart, you'd realize everything was determined. What the Stoics would say is, if you're really smart, you'd realize everything was coming at you from the will of God, and you wouldn't have any passion. You'd have